What if, instead of going to face Aizen, the orange-haired hybrid son of a pure-blood Quincy and Masaki, and Ishin, a former member of the 4 great noble families that oversaw the birth of the Bleach universe, suddenly appeared during the 4th Great Ninja War? Could he have ended it? In this hypothetical, there are 2 scenarios. Number 1 is immediately after Obito becomes the 10 Tails Jinchuriki, but just before the activation of the infinite Tsukiyomi, and 2, after Kaguya's resurrection. To answer this question, I need to give you a brief rundown on the kind of monster that a Dangai Ichigo was. Dangai Ichigo refers to an Ichigo who was taken into a dimension disconnected from space and time, known as the Dangai by Ishin. Abusing the numerous temporal dimensions and Aizen destroying the cleaner that governs space and time, Ichigo was provided with the perfect conditions to complete this task of acquiring the final Getsuga Tensho, a technique stated to surpass everything, in which Ichigo becomes Getsuga. The absurdity of this scaling encompasses not just Senna's explosion feat. I want you to keep in mind that at this point, the Zero Division, not just in name alone, but individuals like Hikifune, were already established figures in the series as the sworn protectors of the Reo, each possessing the kind of power which, when the other members of Squad Zero break their blood oath, unleashing a mere fraction can make the 3 great realms tremble with bare minimum multi-galaxy levels of force, and they also emit Reiatsu pulses logically fast enough to traverse these mind-numbing distances in seconds. Now this feat is insane, but remember, Ichigo's strength did not come overnight. From his trials in the Soul Society, spelling all of Byakuya's Senbone Zakura petals, to overwhelming Grimmjow and Ukura's resurrection, evading Gin's amplified Kamishiri no Yari, which is reinforced by being above characters that should have relativistic reactions as implied by the existence of the superhuman drug. Mugetsu's beyond all of this. It is the culmination of these trials and him surpassing his base form with his linear Bankai and qualification multipliers time and time again, which has resulted in a monster that is Dangai Ichigo. Now when it comes to the task of ending the 4th Great Ninja War, it's important to highlight what exactly the primary objectives were. This is not a conversation of who can swing or run the fastest. If it was, this video would probably only be about 2 minutes long. Utility and hindsight of strength is the most important factor when determining whether or not Ichigo could have been successful. These objectives are highlighted at the end of the 5 Great Summit when Obito presents an ultimatum to the Kage: surrender the last 2 Jinchuriki or war. Through the sacrifice of the 2 Jinchuriki, he would be able to use their Biju to resurrect the 10 Tails. By harnessing said power, he would be able to complete the Tsukinome project. This was the inherited dream of Madara, to which a powerful and unending ocular jutsu would reflect off the moon's surface, ensnaring all of the Earth's inhabitants, essentially creating a world devoid of war and conflict. Before we go any further, thanks to my guy Josh for the request. I massively apologize for the wait. Drop a like if you haven't already, as it helps massively to push this video out to more people, and subscribe if you want to. Now onto the video. Much like the original manga, in the first scenario, Obito has just received enough chakra to activate the Shinju tree, and similarly, the proportion of Kurama and Gyuki's chakra means that there's still a 15-minute delay before the jutsu takes effect. Of course, the branches are still responsive to chakra and siphon the life out of the shinobi it comes in contact with. In this hypothetical, Naruto, although alive, has been incapacitated due to an unknown chakra disease, and Sakura and Sasuke have their hands full keeping him from kicking the bucket. As such, the 2 are temporarily removed from the battlefield. Any less and getting through the war would be far too easy, as they were instrumental in ending the war originally. Also, no amount of Sakura hate can deny that. Fortunately, Madara tells us what he would have done had Naruto failed in using a combination of chakra subjugation and his way with words to help the Shinobi Alliance to pull the Bijus out of Obito's body. Madara's plan being to weaken Obito to an extent wherein he could manipulate the chakra in his body to trigger a Rinne rebirth before retaking the Bijus, becoming the 10 Tails Jinchuriki himself. Now not only does Ichigo not have chakra, he possesses multiple forms of non-physical interaction, such as being able to influence the soul in and outside of physical objects, and funnily enough, has also had experience in competing in a soul tug of war with White, on top of which displaying the greatest levels of spiritual energy control up until this point, being that the deadly balance doesn't end following him obtaining his Holomask, so it's completely plausible that he'd be able to separate the Biju from Obito, irrespective of his persuasiveness. From here, the only problem is whether or not he's fast enough to tag a Jubito capable of blitzing Hashirama and Tobirama, and having his speed recognized by Rama Avatar Mode Naruto, and handing them over to the Alliance, or destroying Obito. Now since Ichigo doesn't have ninjutsu, he doesn't have to worry about being able to damage Obito and can just hit him really hard, similar to Guy. Both suffice as a condition for ending the war, after which all he would need to do is either unalive or seal Madara in tandem with the reanimated Hokage. So it really does boil down to speed. Like any member of the big 3, there are a billion ways to scale Naruto characters, with certain metas being more consistent and others considerably more ridiculous. Now no matter what stance you take and the consistency of the position, you'll either be downplaying or overscaling Naruto. My position is that the data books present often contradictory, inconsistent speed statements for different Naruto characters at various points in the series that can't reasonably be reconciled. Several characters are at drastically different points in the series with drastically different scaling, some of which are chakra dependent speed statements, so one can make the case although it defeats the purpose of the speed statement, but it doesn't necessarily have to remain at said speed, and others like Kirin, which utilizes literal lightning. Regardless, these can't possibly be abilities that have exactly the same speed, and so my conclusion is that data books do not have a consistent collective voice. This does not mean we're throwing away all of the data books. The logical conclusion is, since extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, I think reasonably the god tiers are most likely to have these statements applied in truth, hence why people don't tend to have a problem with light. Now, I have yet to see an accurate human translation of this statement, so I decided to provide one myself. That way it becomes clear whether or not the technique Light Fang is itself moving at said speed. The Light Fang is a technique described as being given to those who possess the power of the Sage of Six Paths, a ninjutsu that releases a light beam which bisects the enemy. It possesses a fang-like sharpness, a beam that boasts the speed of light with which it cuts all things. An enemy would be incapable of evading even a single swing. From this statement, it is markedly clear that the swing for full attack has a set speed. Just thought I'd clear that up. Now, before which, Obito should at the very least be in the extremely high, massively hypersonic plus to sub-relativistic range, given that he should be considerably faster than the Rasen Shuriken speed feat in the Pain Arc, but still inferior to Jubidara's feat of flying up to cast the Infinite Tsukiyomi, and Naruto reacting to Light Fang, which also hovers around the relativistic to light speed ranges of speed. And of course, in terms of attack potency, he should scale above all the ridiculous feats from the infamous Shubaku Tensei from the Pain Invasion up to the multi-continental plus 10-tail storm, given that he can harness its power as a Jinchuriki. I think it's clear that Ichigo would make short work of Obito, and the only remaining issue would be Edo Madara, but he is weaker than the live one, and as a Shinigami, interacting and sending away souls would absolutely not be a problem. Where things become a little bit more interesting is when considering how the war would have ended had Kaguya managed to return while the heavy hitters on the Shinobi side were out of commission due to the Infinite Tsukiyomi's activation. Well, besides Obito, of course. How would Ichigo fare against the same Kaguya, stated to have chakra that far exceeds Madara, before absorbing more from all of his shinobi scattered across the world?
Given that the Infinite Tsukiyomi runs on the moon's light, Ichigo would only have 12 hours at the most to take down Kaguya.
It goes without saying that Kaguya would scale above any previous feat displayed in the series. Speed we'll get into, and this would include the deep forest emergence performed by Madara that could easily bump her into the small planetary to planetary ranges. The big question, of course, is whether or not she scales to the destruction or creation of her dimension. I've discussed this in great detail in the past, but before we revisit my position, let's provide some much needed and often overlooked nuance to Kaguya's attack. The first being the distinction between a final attack and the AP that she's capable of consistently outputting in short bursts. In the original manga, the expansive truth-seeking orb required that chakra be drawn across dimensions and was sent directly into the attack that was threatening the entirety of their physical ball space, with the Japanese simply being that it is the start of a new space. Now, as the meta goes, we should all be more than familiar with a particular scan, with Sasuke showing what appears to be a star within one of her dimensions. Many argue hence that there must be something like a day or night cycle, and as per the meta, she would scale to at least star level. Whilst I see the vision and I would be very interested in calculating said feat, there are a few variables that make this method of scaling quite questionable. Not only does this appear to be glaringly slower than any of her other attacks, and you need to know the duration of a feat to calculate the energy, but the bigger concern is the idea that man-made bodies have to adhere to the natural parameters of stars. The reason destroying stars in the real world is so impressive is due to the unique gravitational interaction that exists in our universe, and for some reason people seem to forget that these are not inherently present in her dimensions. Not to mention that in Naruto, there exists a unique ninjutsu that doesn't exist in most series, which means that massive gravitational bodies can be created without altering the magnetic fields of celestial bodies, which means there isn't a necessary orbital distance even if you know the mass of a body in Naruto, and quantifying something like this hence requires even more information that was simply not provided. And that's not to downplay Naruto, I've seen it in every series I've scaled. That's just how fiction can be. We need distances to determine how impressive it is to destroy a dimension. And with that being said, people forget that the gravitational binding energy of stars vary massively. In this case, it ties heavily with the mass of the planets that exist within her ball space, which we also have no concrete way of quantifying. But regardless, between Senna's explosion and the zero division scaling, the outcome wouldn't change. Now, the conversation might get a little bit more interesting with Boruto, but in regards to Shippuden, planetary plus feats in the last, if we don't have consistency, what do we have? Outside of a reasonable physical comparability to an ever-evolving teenage Naruto, albeit clearly she's slower, and obviously she has insane genjutsu prowess with the Byakugan and the Sharingan that also conflate her speed scaling. The main problem she poses to Ichigo is her ability to forcefully remove people from the battlefield. She can drag you into her alternate ball dimensions, can travel around said dimensions to try and catch you off guard. But doing this takes considerably more time than teleporting everybody within a certain range into a unique space, and this is seemingly due to the need to first create a space ripple. Unfortunately, given Ichigo's speed as well as his ability to break through dimensions, it seems incredibly unlikely that she would be able to escape into another dimension whilst leaving Ichigo there. Ichigo's hacks, like being able to gain traction on the air, his resistance to gravity manipulation, makes him a problem even in the face of her gravity or lava spaces. Not to mention his resistance to the blood pond induced corrosion manipulation, as demonstrated during his rehab at the Soul King Palace. Ichigo's defensive capabilities
and his ability to bypass extrasensory manipulation
make this matchup overall incredibly disadvantageous for Kaguya. By significantly damaging her, as shown with the other 10 tails in Jinchuriki, this would destabilize her jutsu and free the Biju. Due to the fact that Kaguya's goal is to reunite chakra, regardless of whether or not Obito or Kakashi passed due to Naruto's chakra disease or removed into one of Kaguya's dimensions, it seems clear that the result would be the same. Ichigo, without a doubt, could have ended the 4th Great Ninja War. If you guys enjoyed, drop a like so we can really hustle, subscribe, give me video suggestions.
I'm trying to get back to 10k on TikTok, so follow that too if you haven't already.
And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.